Joe Kissell takes control of Apple Contacts, Part 1. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by MacVoices Live, our weekly live panel discussion of what is going on in the Apple space, as well as the larger tech world, and how it is impacting you. Join us live at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, or whatever time that is wherever you are, at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV, and participate in the chat, or catch the edited and segmented versions of the show on the regular MacVoices channels and feeds. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's been way too long since we had a chance to talk to Joe Kissell about a new Take Control book. And I mean a new Take Control book, not a revision of a Take Control book, but a brand new title. Joe, it's great to have you back. We've missed you.
It's nice to be here. You know, as you were saying that, I just had this feeling that you were going to say, it's Joe time. You know, like Joe time only. It's
yeah. Well, if you would like that introduction.
It's okay that you didn't say that, and it probably would have been better if I hadn't said that. But yeah, it's nice to be back.
All right. Well, it's Joe time to talk about his new book, Take Control of Apple Contacts. Joe, I want to hear the backstory as well as about the book, because this is one that, first of all, it doesn't seem like there should be a lot to say. But second, why now?
Yeah. Well, here's the story. Over the years, people have written to me quite a few times saying, "Why don't you have a book on Apple's Contacts app? I really want a book on contacts." And every time I would get an email like this, in fact, I got the most recent one was maybe 6 weeks ago or something. I kind of say, no, it's just not going to happen. And the reason I swore for so many years that we would not have a book on Apple Contacts is that Apple Contacts is a terrible, terrible app. So what would happen is somebody would say, "Hey, Joe, I really need a book on contacts because I'm trying to do X and I can't figure out how to do X." And I would say, "It's not you, it's Apple." This is, my refrain in a lot of my books. It's not you, it's Apple. You want it to do a thing, it does not do that thing. It's not that you need a book to explain to you how to do this thing that the app can't do. The problem is that the app can't do that thing. And Apple has basically ignored this app for years and years and years and years. There are a few exceptions to talk about, but all those features that you feel like this app ought to have, all these things that ought to be straightforward and easy to do, and if you only had a book telling you how, it turns out it can't do that thing. And no, it's not your imagination. This app is still stuck in like the year 2000 or something, and we'll discuss some of its anachronisms and failings and whatnot. But people still kept asking for a book. So part of it was like just me being worn down, but part of it was there is a degree to which the Contacts app, and I'm talking about, for your watch, for iPhone, iPad, for your Mac, and also on the iCloud website, there is an extent to which it is just fundamentally not good and it's broken. But there is also an extent to which it is kind of poorly designed. There are things that it can do that you probably never discovered because they're hidden. There are things that it can do that you might have said, "Oh, well, I see that thing there, but I don't want to do that." But that's not what that actually means. Like, labels don't mean what you think they mean. And I realized that there are a lot of things like that, where even though, yes, the app is severely lacking in some ways, that there are parts of it that do genuinely need just a better explanation. And there are a few things that I can explain workarounds for. I can't fix Apple's bugs. I can't add features to the app, but I can tell you, if you do this little magical thing, it will get you kind of part way to what you actually want. So that's what the book is all about. I was telling you before we started recording, I figured, contacts, it is such a small, seemingly insignificant app. How long could a book be? 50 pages, maybe? Well, I've thought that about other books, preview and notes and like other books other authors have written. And I think, oh, this is going to be so short. And it's just like, so yeah. So this is 76 pages, which is still, short by our standards, but turns out there's that much to say about contacts. So that's where we're at.
So I'm intrigued by this because when I first heard that you were writing this book, I kind of had two reactions. One of which is what you said, it's just contacts, big deal. Then I started realizing that, one of the most important resources or assets any of us has, especially if you're in business of any kind, which who isn't, is your quote unquote Rolodex or contacts list. So it is an extremely important app. And I'm anxious to hear, what it doesn't do that people want it to do. Because I can think of one or two things myself, but everybody is probably a little bit idiosyncratic on how they use a contacts app or their contacts app.
Yeah. And I'm gonna talk about that, but I wanted to go back to what you just said, is that basically a lot in our day-to-day lives, our work, whatever, depends on our list of contacts. And as I was writing the book, I kept having these like, oh yeah, we need it for that too. Oh yeah, I forgot. Oh, did you? And so like, when I'm in the Maps app, I want to get directions to someone's house, or I'm away someplace, I want to get directions back to my house. Maps talks to contacts to get that information. If you're in the Calendar app and you have a calendar full of birthdays, well, Calendar gets those birthdays from the Contacts app. And, FaceTime and messages and mail and so on. Lots of third-party apps too. The weather app, like all kinds of apps on whichever device you're using depend on information that is in Contacts. So even if it's a lousy app, or even if you don't like using it, if you don't use it as well as you are able, then all other, like many other parts of your experience of using Apple devices, it will suffer. So that realization sort of shaped how I approach the topic. It's not just that, like, you mentioned a Rolodex, so it's like, yeah, well, I had a Rolodex back in the day, and you flip to the card, and okay, work number, yeah, I'm going to pick up my hardwired telephone and dial that work number. You can use contacts that way. I think very few people do. It's not so much that you want to look up a number or an address and then go do something with it. It's that you want that to feed into something. I want to start, an iMessage conversation with you. Well, I'm just going to type Chuck Joyner in messages, and it's going to pull your, Apple account out of contacts. So, or if I wanted to call you, which call you on the telephone? Come on, who does that? But if I wanted to, I could tap or click a button in contacts and so forth. So so I just like the Rolodex idea. It's like it's still there, and it's in your life, in your work, you depend on knowing how to contact various people, and like all the little notes you had scribbled on the bottom of those cards, like don't ever call before 10 a.m. or whatever. You can put that stuff in contacts too. So it's really really essential in that way. So let me talk about the number one thing that people think they ought to be able to do in contacts, and they can't. Exactly. So if you use Apple's calendar app, or a third party app like BusyCal or whatever, um, you know that you can share a calendar with other people. So my family shares a calendar so that we have like lots of people in the family where they've got, meetings and appointments and concerts and all these different things. So we have a shared family calendar. I've got my own calendar. I've got a few calendars, and there's a shared family calendar so we can keep track of our stuff. And I share my personal calendar with my wife, and she shares her personal calendar with me too, so we can see like what is a family thing and what is a her thing, what is a me thing, and so forth. So we're used to being able to share data like that through iCloud usually, and especially if you're in a family sharing group, we not only share calendars, we share photos, we share like space on iCloud Drive. There are all these, many different types of data that we just always assume, well, of course you can share your reminders list, like we share a shopping list in the family. Okay, and it's just sort of normal and obvious. Of course you're going to want to share notes. Of course you're going to want to share shopping lists and things. And so people naturally assume that you would be able to do that in contacts too. I have my own contacts. My wife has her own contacts. But shouldn't there be a family shared list of contacts so that like if somebody gets a new phone number or they move or something, one person updates it and then everybody that's sharing that sees the same update? Like that seems like a no-brainer. That seems obvious. Contacts does not have that feature. Now, other contact management apps and services do have that feature. If you work for a company or an educational institution or something like that that uses LDAP, it's a calendar protocol, then that system supports shared calendars, and you can actually connect to that system in contacts. You don't have to use iCloud. You can use Hotmail, you can use Yahoo, you can use Gmail, whatever. So if you happen to have an LDAP server in your organization, great, you get shared calendars. You're not going to be able to do the sharing part from within contacts. You'll have to set that up on your server. But once there is a shared list, group list, whatever, of contacts in your team, organization, company, then you can absolutely get at that within contacts. But if you're just like an ordinary person, you're not a corporation, you're not, you don't have access to one of these kinds of servers, you can't do it. So some people, and I've tried this too, some people thought, I'm going to work around this. I'm going to just share my iCloud credentials with, let's say, my wife. So as many people don't know, but maybe you do, on your iPhone, iPad, Mac, whatever, you can't, like, you sign into your personal iCloud account, but that doesn't have to be the only one. In addition to your own personal iCloud account, you can also sign into other iCloud accounts. So I have, a few. And so I thought, all right, well, I'll just give my wife my login information, and she can log into my iCloud account on her Mac, let's say, as a secondary account, and just like she can turn off all the other stuff. She doesn't have to look at the mail and the calendar, whatever, but she could just turn on the contacts part, and then, hey, great, we're both looking at the same contacts. And I thought that was very clever of myself, and other people said that they have done the same thing. But then we ran into a problem, because there's your card in contacts, or what Apple calls my card. And so it's the card with your information on it, and there can only be one of those. So if you're connected to two different iCloud accounts, only one card in only one of those accounts can be yours. And if I mark a certain card as my card and that information syncs in iCloud, then my wife's Mac is going to think that my card is her card. or vice versa. And it gets really, really confusing. So you don't want to do that. What you can do is set up a brand new iCloud account, new account from scratch, or it doesn't have to be an iCloud account. It can be a Gmail account, Hotmail account, whatever, doesn't matter. Some free account somewhere. And you get a username and a password for that account, and you add that to each of your devices as a secondary iCloud account. Do not create a card for yourself in this account. Just don't. Now, you sign into this account, you create a contact card in that account. Your friend, spouse, whatever, also signs into that same account using the same credentials. They don't create a contact card for themselves either in that account or for you. But whichever cards are in that account that you're both using will, of course, show up and sync for both people. So that's the essential technique. Now, there are some gotchas, besides the fact that you don't want to have an extra My card because that'll screw things up. There is the fact that this isn't really secure. Like, sharing the same set of credentials amongst multiple people is nearly always a bad idea. Everyone should have their own account. And this is, I mean, it's basically a hack. It's a workaround. It's not ideal. It's not perfect. There are limitations to this, but Apple's stance seems to be, well, we use the CardDAV protocol for contacts, and it's a very, very old industry standard protocol that does not include things like sharing or even encryption. So, our hands are tied. We're stuck with whatever CardDAV can do. Except other companies have solved this problem. There are companies like Proton and Tuta that have their own their own contacts systems protocols. You have to use their contacts apps to log into them, but once you use those, you can share them with other people who also use that system. And Apple could have done the same thing, but for whatever reason, they haven't. So that is of the numerous complaints about things contacts can't do. That's at the top of the list, and that's something I spend a good bit of time on in the book.
I guess because I don't have the particular situation you're talking about, I've never really thought about that. But it's an interesting workaround, especially if you're saying not to create a card for yourself in the secondary account. So that just leaves the door wide open for you to do whatever, or for you not to sync it. Because if I'm understanding you correctly, no particular card is mandated as your card until you tell it that is.
That's correct.
Card.
Yeah, you have to tell contacts, and you can tell contacts that this particular card in this particular account is my card. You can't have multiple different cards set up as your card, but it gets super weird and gnarly when two different people try to share the same iCloud account.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because I can think of situations where I would like to have my card show my business. Then I'd also have other situations where I'd like to be my card to be the MacVoices contact information. So,
well, you've brought up another thing that I talk about in the book. Hey, how very smart of you.
Yeah, and that was not scripted, folks. That was not scripted.
No. But well done. So let's say I like my card for myself has like all these different email addresses, so many email addresses, and it's important to me to have all of my own email addresses in my card because, again, like mail connects to that and messages connects to that. But if I like yesterday morning, I met a guy and we were chatting, and we realized that we had further conversations were necessary. And so I'm like, hey, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pull out my iPhone and I'm going to hold it right next to yours. And both of our screens are going to light up. And you say, yes, I would like that person's contact, please. And I'd like to share my own. And in a situation like that, or if I'm just using like the share little icon in whatever platform, I don't really want this random guy I just met to know all 17 of my email addresses, or the notes I have for myself or whatever. I really just need him to know like my name and phone number and email address, like one email address. So in contacts, there are ways to say, okay, when I'm sharing, I want to share this field, but not that field. On a Mac, you can set this up as sort of global defaults. You can just, like, you're editing your own card, and there's a bunch of checkboxes: share, don't share, share, don't share. So you just check off what you want to share and what you don't. On an iPhone, it's a little bit different. It asks you kind of every time you go to share something, which fields you want to share. It's a little bit annoying, but anyway, it's the same thing. As you can decide in this moment for this particular person, I only want to share my work stuff, or I only want to share my personal stuff, or whatever. It involves a little bit of tapping around, but like, it's not a big deal. So I think that Apple could have made this a lot simpler, a lot more elegant. I would love to, like, if I'm in that situation where, hey, I'm going to send you my contact info right now, whether in person or not, I would like to be able to say, send this person only my work stuff, send this person only my personal stuff, send this person everything. I'd like to be able to just have like predefined lists of what different combinations of facts about myself that I would like to be able to share with different people, so that at sharing time I can just say that one. But you can't. So, I mean, you can get that effect. It just takes more work. So, yeah, that's a great point. Glad you brought it up. That's another one of those things that I talk about in the book.
Okay, so let's see if I can do it again.
All right, do it again.
One of the other issues that I personally have, and I can't quite figure out why, is that I have multiple copies of any given contact. And I know there are utilities out there that say, oh yeah, we can clean this up for you. And I get really paranoid, because to our very first point, this is important stuff for me. I don't want to lose any of it, because I'm not sure it's irreplaceable, but it's pretty close to it. And so I get concerned, and then I get concerned about, well, if I do a backup, how do I go about restoring it? And is that going to give me even more duplicates? So is this something you address in the book?
Yeah. All right. Wow, boy, a can of worms here. And yes, I do. So a couple of things. You might, there are a lot of reasons that one might have duplicate cards. And there could be duplicates if you're importing, or if you accidentally add a second card for someone who already has a card, or like there's a lot of different things that could lead to duplicated information in contacts. And sometimes it's an exact duplicate of like everything. Sometimes it's a duplicate of only some things. Sometimes, like, well, I have two different cards for Chuck Joyner, but they both have different phone numbers. So this situation exists. There are two versions of it. Let's say that you have only one account set up in contacts, like only one cloud sync account, and that's iCloud. So if you have just one account set up and you have duplicate contacts within that one account, contacts has a command, look for duplicate duplicate cards. and it will allow you to merge any duplicates that it finds. But there are some gotchas there. If you do this on an iPhone, actually, you don't even have to do anything. Usually, your iPhone will just say, "Hey, by the way, Joe, I noticed there's a couple of duplicated contacts in here. Do you want me to take care of them for you?" And if I say, "Yeah, okay, do that," then it'll show me, here are the contacts. Like here's version A of Chuck's card. Here's version B of Chuck's card. Here's what would end up getting merged together. You okay with that? And I'll say, no, I think I'm going to do this manually because you're going to screw things up. Or I can say, yeah, fine, go ahead and do that. On a Mac, a little bit different. There's a command, look for duplicated cards. And if you do that, it'll say, oh, well, contacts found 6 duplicates. Do you want to merge them? And you're like, I guess. And you click the merge button and you see nothing. There's no feedback. There's no like, now here's exactly what I found or how I will merge it, or like it doesn't even tell you which cards are duplicated. It just doesn't tell you. So when you click that merge button, you have to do it completely on faith. And faith, we're not going to make this about this is about technology. This is not about faith, but for me, faith needs some sort of rational basis. Like, well, this person has babysat for me a dozen times, so I now, like, I have a history, so I know I can trust this person. Like, you have to have some basis upon which to have trust. And for Apple generally, but for contacts very, very specifically, because I have tried this out in the past and it has royally screwed things up for me, I do not trust that, and I do not recommend that you trust it either. So I have no faith in this feature as it exists in contacts on a Mac. Now, there is a second sense of finding and dealing with duplicates. Let's say you connect to your Gmail account, and Gmail has, as one of its features, it has contacts as well. And so you've got your iCloud account, and that has a bunch of contacts, and you have your Gmail account, and that has a bunch of contacts. And there will be some overlap. Maybe there are cards that, for whatever reason, you really, really, really want to exist only in one account or the other. That's fine. Maybe there are contacts that you really want to exist in both accounts. That's also fine. So if there is a contact, you're like, well, I have a card for Chuck in iCloud, and I have a card for Chuck in Gmail, but I don't want to see 2 separate cards in contacts. That's confusing. So you can link those. You have to do this manually, one contact at a time, but it's a one-time thing. You can say, okay, take this card from Chuck here and this card from Chuck here and link them. And what linking means is that in the Contacts app, you will only see one card, and that card will contain merged information from both of those places. If you add a new field, like a new phone number, that will get put in both of those places too. But you can later, but there's still 2 separate cards. So you can later unlink them, and then each card has, the version of the card in each account has only its own stuff in it. So that's useful. That's a really good feature to have. I would say that the implementation is maybe not 100% crystal clear. It could be made a lot easier, but I'm glad that it's there. So Contacts does have tools to deal with this sort of stuff. They're just unevenly. I'm losing my words. They're unevenly presented across platforms. So if the Mac version of Contacts could get some of that better merging mojo from the iPhone version, and why shouldn't it? That would be really helpful. I will have more to say on this theme in a moment.
Okay, so I'm interpreting your comments that the iPhone version is desirable because of the control. Do you have the almost out of curiosity, because of the larger screen and potentially larger workspace, do you have the same control on an iPad?
So the capabilities of the iPhone and iPad versions of contacts are identical. On an iPad, because you have a larger screen, you have like a sidebar that you can toggle on or off, and that makes it easier to like move cards around and navigate and stuff. There's a lot more tapping involved than an iPhone because you don't have space for that. But the actual the features themselves are identical.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.